Hola, bonjour, hello. Let's get started with today's lesson. So I'm going to present my screen to you, and we'll take a look at first some math vocabulary. So what we have here are angles, right? Here's the word angle, A-N-G-L-E. Go ahead and say that word angle. Awesome. And there's a very special angle that we probably have learned in math class at this point. That's a right angle, okay? A 90-degree angle is a right angle in English. We'll call it a 90-degree angle, but most of the time we'll call it a right angle in English. If it is less than 90 degrees, we call that angle an acute angle. Go ahead and say that. Awesome. And then if it's greater than 90 degrees, we call that an obtuse angle. So go ahead and say that word obtuse. Awesome. All right, so those are three important angle names that I want to make sure that you know. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on main idea today. I am going to read an excerpt, and an excerpt is just means part of the book, The Mighty Saguaro Cactus. We're not going to read the whole thing. Next week, you'll have a chance to read the whole thing. But today, we're just going to read an excerpt of it. And we're going to think about what is the main idea of that section. So remember that from last year. The main idea is one sentence that tells us what this section is mostly about. Like, what are the most important things that we need to know about in one sentence from that section. So what we'll do is we'll read it and we'll think about what are three really important details from that section. And we'll use those three important details to help us write the one sentence that is the main idea. Something I like to always think about also is what is the topic of what we're reading? What is the one or two word thing that we're reading about? So we are going to start off by reading part of The Mighty Saguaro Cactus. And we are going to actually skip ahead to chapter 2 on page 7. This will give you some background about the Saguaro Desert, and then we will start reading the next chapter, and that is the chapter that we will find the main idea for. Up close and personal. The saguaro grows only in the Sonoran Desert. It cannot be found anywhere else in the world. Though even in the Sonoran Desert, it cannot grow everywhere. The saguaro needs enough water to grow and protection from freezing temperatures. It usually grows on land between sea level and 4,000 feet, which is 1,219 meters above sea level. This area provides the saguaro with the conditions it needs to grow. The saguaro also needs to protect itself from other desert dangers. It grows thousands of 2-inch spines on its body. These sharp spines prevent animals from eating it. Spines are also the saguaro's silent way of saying, "Don't knock me down." Saguaro spines grow in clusters. A saguaro grows very slowly. At age 14, it is still a baby and only as tall as a pencil. A baby saguaro normally grows under a nursing plant, like a Palo Verde. The nursing plant protects it from the sun, wind, and animals. A saguaro will not grow its first flower until the age of 50. The cactus may grow many arms and hundreds of flowers. It will grow its first branch or arm at 60. The height of a 200-year-old saguaro may extend more than 50 feet or 15 meters above the Sonoran Desert surface. So I see here a bar graph that shows us in feet the slow, tall growth of the saguaro. So at age 14, you can see it's not really much taller than 0 feet. But then at age 35, it's about 5 feet right there. Age 65, we're looking at about 20 feet in height. And then age 175, we're looking at 50 feet in height. All right, so this next chapter, Surviving the Sonoran Desert, we're going to think about the main idea. So as I am reading through this chapter, I want you to be thinking about what are some of the most important details that are constantly repeated over and over again, that are the important information that we need to know from this chapter. Surviving the Sonoran Desert. The Sonoran Desert is hot. A summer day can reach a scorching 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 49 degrees Celsius. The Sonoran Desert is also dry. Months can pass without a single drop of rain. What if you didn't drink a drop of water for months? Wouldn't you get thirsty? Like people and other animals, plants need water to live. Water is scarce in the desert. Scarce means hard to find. Here's a map here, and it says the Sonoran Desert is located in North America. People from Mexico, the United States, and several Native American nations call the Sonoran Desert home. But when it does rain, it rains hard. Half of the year's rain falls in just 2 months. These late summer monsoon storms bring strong winds and lots of lightning. It rains so fast and hard that dry stream beds and riverbeds quickly become raging torrents of water, and streets quickly flood. The saguaro is an expert water collector. Its long, shallow roots spread out in all directions just below the ground surface. When it rains, these roots soak up tons of water, which the saguaro stores inside its trunk and arms. Many plants lose water through their leaves. Just as people sweat, plants transpire, but the saguaro has spines instead of leaves, so it doesn't lose as much water. The saguaro skin is tough and waxy. This also helps to keep water inside. There's a picture and it says saguaros expand like sponges when they soak up water. Last page of the chapter. Do you know? The word cactus has 2 plural forms, cactuses and cacti. Many people from the Sonoran Desert say cacti, 1 cactus, 2 cacti, 3 cacti, 4. And this picture here says, this owl is just one of many animals that live in the Sonoran Desert. Surviving in this desert is tough. Animals and plants must find enough water to live, and they must protect themselves from the extreme weather. They also must defend against hungry animals. Many plants and animals have adapted well to the Sonoran Desert. Hummingbirds, doves, and quail fly about. Coyotes, rabbits, and snakes also live here. Many types of bushes, trees, and other cacti grow here as well. All right. So if I go back and I think about the main idea here, and I fill in the topic first, what is the one thing that this whole section is talking about? The one thing. Yep, the saguaro cactus. So I know that the word saguaro cactus is going to be in my main idea sentence. Before we get to the main idea sentence, let's think about some of the details that were in the book. So when I went back and I think about the chapter, I think about the first page. And on the first page, I think about what was this page telling us? Yeah, so if you're like me, you're thinking about how this page was really telling us about how hot and inhospitable the Sonoran Desert is. So I'm going to write that detail down here. The Sonoran Desert is inhospitable. And then as I glance to the next page, I remember reading a lot about, in fact, the last 2 paragraphs on this page were about how the saguaro cactus stores water to survive in the desert. So because 2 whole paragraphs out of 3 paragraphs are about that, I think it's a pretty big detail, so I'm going to include that. The saguaro cactus stores water to survive the desert. Awesome. And then one more detail. Let's look at the next page that I read. So this page was talking about how surviving in the desert is tough and animals have had to adapt. Plants and animals, excuse me. So I'm going to write plants and animals adapt to live in the desert. All right. So now let's take a look at the details that we've identified. The Sonoran Desert is inhospitable. The saguaro cactus stores water to survive the desert, and plants and animals adapt to live in the desert. So now I'm going to think about my sentence for the main idea. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I include I want to include each of these details in there. I'm not going to write a 3-sentence main idea, but I'm going to include important parts of these details in the sentence. So I'm going to start it off with, I'll give you a chance to think about it first, and you can pause if you need more time to think about what your sentence would be. So I would start mine off with the Sonoran Desert is inhospitable. So we've covered this one. So let's do comma. So the saguaro cactus. So here we're covering, we made sure that we included the word saguaro cactus, the topic. So now I want to talk about how it has adapted to survive the desert. But I'm also thinking about, wow, these other plants and animals are adapting to survive in the desert as well. So I can kind of mush that together. So I'm going to say the Sonoran Desert is inhospitable. So the saguaro cactus, along with other plants and animals, have to adapt to survive. And the reason I set it up that way is I'm making sure I covered how the desert is inhospitable, but also how plants and animals, along with the saguaro cactus, must adapt to survive. So with that sentence, I've covered all 3 details and made sure to include the topic. So my main idea is the Sonoran Desert is inhospitable. So the saguaro cactus, along with other plants and animals, have to adapt to survive, period. There's my main idea. And if you think about that main idea, it really does cover everything that I read about in these 3 pages, the whole chapter. All right, that is our lesson for today. And I will see you next time.